Attention to Lebanon, where tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets once again this Wednesday. These are the largest demonstrations the country has seen in 14 years, with many calling on the government to step down. And there have been reports of the military and police forces attacking crowds. The movement continues despite Prime Minister Saad Hariri proposing a series of economic reforms. Now, earlier, sources told Reuters news agency that Lebanese leaders are discussing a possible government reshuffle. Let's now cross live to Maha YAHYA for analysis on this ongoing story. She's the director of the Carnegie Middle East Center, and she joins us, of course, from Beirut. Thank you so much for being with us. Maha, roads are being blocked. We're seeing the use of violence and force against the protesters. A reform package was presented. Do you think this potential cabinet reshuffle could appease the protesters in a way?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm not so sure. The problem is that with every step, the government seems to be behind the protesters, so it's a little too late. Sometimes it's not a little. The economic plan has actually some important reform proposals, but they were too late. Had these been proposed 3 months ago or even 3 weeks ago, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I'm afraid that with the cabinet reshuffle, we may also be in this position if they wait too long. It's already maybe too late for that. The street is way ahead of them. They're demanding no less than the resignation of the prime minister, the entire cabinet, and some are even going as far as asking for the resignation of the president himself.
Now, you just mentioned and reiterated several times that it may be a case of too little, too late. Can you talk our viewers what brought us here? Is it not too simplistic to boil this down to this WhatsApp tax?
Oh, absolutely. It's the WhatsApp tax, frankly, was just the tipping point. This has been a build-up over the last few months, if not the last few years. But particularly this year, people are seeing their economic situation decline. Their standards of living are declined. Poverty is on the increase. Unemployment is increasing, particularly amongst the educated youth. And over the past, I would say, year, there's been increasing threats of possible devaluation of the Lebanese lira. Now, should this devaluation happen, and in the last few weeks and the build up to this, we saw the Lebanese lira, the exchange rate going up on the black market. Of course, the concern is, should the lira be devaluated, then we are going to see a dramatic decline in the standards of living for a substantial portion of Lebanese. They would be seeing their pensions disappear, their life savings disappear. Already many of them are struggling. One tiny indicator is the Ministry of Education announced that they've had an 18% increase in enrollment in public schools. This tells you that a good chunk of Lebanese families can no longer afford to send their children to private schools, which is usually the school of choice for many families. So now they're sending them to the cheaper public schools.
I'm just going to interrupt you there because we don't have a lot of time left to ask other questions. So you've just given us a list, a plethora of economic issues, something that's trending across the region. Why is it then that some observers are saying that these protests are not your regular Middle East uprising? Can you be a little bit more brief with that?
With Lebanon, it's because, we've never seen anything this wide in scope. Demonstrations are happening across the country and not just in major cities. It's very decentralized. More importantly, we're seeing criticism of all the sectarian and political leaders from within their own communities. So it's the Shia community that's criticizing its own leadership, the Sunni community criticizing its own leadership, the Christians the same. This is quite significant. People are coming together for the first time saying, we're Lebanese, we want a civic state, we no longer want to be defined by our sectarian identities. We believe this is what has led to the economic and political mismanagement of the country, and we want a new system in place. the social contract between the state and its citizens, and between citizens and their community, is broken.
And lastly, what happens indeed if the government does fall? Does that not spell even more instability for Lebanon and, of course, the region?
I don't see the government falling as such. I think we're now at an impasse. The government needs to make a decision. I don't think they're even contemplating resignation at this point. As you mentioned, they're thinking about a shuffle. Should there be more instability, the two, if you want, forces that could step in are the army. And I don't know whether we could look at a Sudan style where it's a mix between civilian and military rule, or we could be looking at non-state actors stepping in. But I think we're quite far from that, at least at this point.
Maha YAHYA of the Carnegie Middle East Center, thank you so much for your analysis here on France 24.